Savvy friend, if you've been around here for a while, or maybe even just a few minutes, and you might see our weekly newsletters, or maybe you're friends with me on Facebook and you see what I post about, it is no secret that I like cats, right? It's just not a secret. It's part of who I am. And one of the things, you're going to see cats all over Savvy Music Studio. That's just kind of how we roll here. But one of the things you might not know about me is that I'm also a really big houseplant enthusiast slash hoarder. I have about 40 houseplants in my house. I know, please, don't judge. But that is where the inspiration from today's broadcasts come from. So I am going to be I'll tell you a short little story and then we'll get right into all of the good stuff today. I was working with some of my houseplants. There was some maintenance that needed to be done a couple of weeks ago, and that's when this idea kind of popped into my brain. And I've been waiting for a while to share this with you, and I'm excited because today's topic is what we can learn from houseplants as music business owners. So we're going to be going through 5 lessons that we can learn from houseplants. You do not need a green thumb to enjoy or benefit from the lessons here today. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do that, I am going to check and make sure that we are going live in all the places and all the spaces. So while I do that, please, if you are tuning in live or on the replay, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you're a houseplant enthusiast, what's your favorite plant? I'll be right back. And perfect timing. All right, so here we are. Today's topic is what we can learn from houseplants, the business lessons that we can take from those lovely plants that we have around our house. If anybody needs plants and you're in the local area, look me up. All right, so anyway, welcome. If you're new here, let me take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Sara Campbell. I am a business marketing and mindset coach for music studio owners and online education experts just like you. And we go live here on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about all those topics. And side note, did you know that my maiden name used to be Kimball? And every once in a while I stumble on saying my name out loud? That's a thing. All right, so we're going to get to it today. Let's make sure that we do a quick little housekeeping. If you hear something that is valuable to you today, or if there is something that you've learned that you would like to share, give us a hashtag takeaway and put that in the comments below. If you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. We are putting out new content on YouTube every week. Not only are we putting out these lives, but we are also putting out YouTube shorts, and that's something that's new. So if you have not subscribed to our channel yet, head on over to YouTube and just look up Savvy Music Studio, and that's where you can do that. All right, I have set up the Savvy Sara bot with show notes from today, so she will deliver to you the 5 points that we're going through. So if you are on Facebook or if you are on Instagram, if you drop the word plant down below, the Savvy Sara bot will reach out to you and make sure that you get the goods from today. If you are watching on YouTube, please look in the description or in the live chat, and you will find a link that you can click on in order to get those notes. Hey there. I think Haley's watching over on Instagram. She says, our studio owner, Rebecca, is a self-proclaimed crazy plant lady, so this is perfect. Yay, I'm so glad. All right, so greetings. I see Elizabeth is tuning in from Central New York. Christina is saying hey from Royal Oaks, Michigan. And Julie is saying hi from Pittsburgh. She says, I kill houseplants. I'm desperately trying to keep a plant one of my students gave me for the studio alive. And Laura's waving. She's up in Canada. Hi. All right. So let me preface where this story comes from. So let's unpack this issue a little bit. So I mentioned at the very top of the broadcast that one of the reasons I chose this is because a few weeks back, I was doing some houseplant maintenance. I have a lot of houseplants. It's kind of one of my hobbies. The last time I counted how many plants I have, it's around 40. That may or may not be accurate. I think it actually might be more because I did do some propagation last week. I like plants. Um, if you've been watching this broadcast for a while, you'll notice in the background that I have some plants here. I have that little happy dude right there. And for those who have been here for a long time, you may remember that over here, there used to be a big plant. Well, that's where the story and inspiration comes from today. You'll notice the plant is no longer there. Well, there's a reason for that. And I'm going to share the story of that plant. And we might even have a little houseplant guest show up towards the end of the broadcast. But let me return to my thoughts here. So I was going through some of the houseplant maintenance that happens when you have 40 houseplants. And, that involved trimming some things up, getting some things propagated that, and planted that I had propagated and things like that. And this story of this guy that is no longer behind me really got me thinking around the lessons that we can take from houseplants when it comes to business. Last year, we actually did a broadcast that's a little similar to this. We talked about the lessons that we can learn from trees. And if you do want to get a hold of that, if you would like to listen in on that and you're kind of a plant enthusiast like me, just pop the word tree down below and I'll find the link for you. You can find that on our YouTube channel as well. So let's get to it. We can learn lots of things from houseplants, and I have 5 things that I'd love to show you. Julie says you need to teach me not only your business tips, but your plant techniques too. I love that. And Haley over on Instagram says, don't count the houseplants. Yeah, truth. Hashtag truth. All right, so let's get to lesson number 1. The first thing that we can learn from houseplants is that pot size really does matter. So let me just define what I mean by this. Houseplants over time, they are going to outgrow their pots. At least most of them, not all of them. Some of them like to be nice and snug inside a pot, and they don't really want a lot of room for their roots. But typically, houseplants need to be repotted every couple of years. They're going to outgrow their container, and if they aren't moved into a bigger pot, they're going to become root bound. And the soil is going to be zapped of nutrients. And actually, after a long time, the soil can actually become hydrophobic and it won't even absorb any water. It's kind of fascinating. So the same thing can happen to us. It's really important that on a pretty regular basis, maybe, once a year, we check the roots of our businesses and we make sure that they have room to grow. Otherwise, we're going to run the risk of outgrowing the systems that we're using and zapping our energy. So let's take an example. I want you to think about this as we're going through these points. I want you to think about what are some examples that you see of that in your own business. So one that, one that's come up with clients that I've worked with in the past is maybe when you started your business, you were using, pretty involved systems, like systems that required a lot of manual attention so that, there were lots of steps that you had to take when you were onboarding people, or maybe lots of steps that you had to take when you're sending out invoices or scheduling people. And as your business grew and you went from having, let's say, 10 students to 30 students, those systems were no longer really serving you. It's similar to that plant that has outgrown the pot and the roots are all twined together down at the bottom. There's no room. It's having a lot of trouble surviving because it's getting like too much water down at the bottom. The roots are going to rot, etc. So it's similar to this idea of outgrowing systems that we're running in our business, because it might be one thing to use a system of manual scheduling when you have 10 students, but that's a totally different story when you have 30 or even 40 students. Same thing, very similar to like if you were going from being a sole prop type of studio where you're the only teacher and you've decided to change your model and you are now a multi-teacher studio, you're definitely not going to be using the same systems. So it's important to recognize when our businesses have outgrown the pots that they were initially planted in. And at that point, what needs to happen is we got to up pot, right? You got to choose a pot that is bigger. You have to take that plant out. You've got to shake out the roots, maybe do some trimming in there, get some new soil, repot that sucker, and be patient as it grows. Yeah, there you go. That's a great point. So Julie is relating this to the idea of a website, and this is very true. Like Julie, you outgrew the website that you had before when your business model changed, when you were not only teaching these amazing students down. Julie's from Pittsburgh. She's just south of me here. Not only were you focused on providing lessons, but you were focused on creating and selling teacher resources. That pot needed to get bigger. Really great. Great example there. If anyone else can think of other examples as we go along, please do share them, and I'll be happy to bring them up on the screen or shout them out loud. Hey there, Dixie Sherwood just joined us over on Instagram. Nice to have you here. If you're just tuning in, say hello. Let us know where you're from. So that's our first point. Pot size matters, right? It's really important to recognize when you need to up pot. Second point that we can learn from houseplants. Houseplants grow towards the light. So if you've ever had a plant, and you just kind of like put it in one spot because it looks pretty there, or that's where there's room for it. And if we do not rotate that plant, eventually it may take time, but what's going to happen is that plant becomes lopsided because it's all going to grow towards the direction of the light, right? Why? Well, that's just how plants roll, right? What can we learn here? Plants are always growing towards positive influences, right? They naturally lean towards positive opportunity. They're leaning towards that light. We can do the same thing, right? So to lean towards the light in your business, lean towards the positive opportunities that come your way, and also leaning towards, positive people and surrounding yourself with good people inside of your business. And it also gives us another lesson here, right? So we are leaning towards the positive opportunities and the positive influences, but also keeping in mind that we do need to balance ourselves and rotate occasionally so that we don't end up that lopsided looking plant like the aloe that I had downstairs that I just kind of refused to move because it was unwieldy and big. And now it's like all growing out one side of the pot. I didn't say I was a perfect houseplant keeper. I just have a lot of houseplants, right? And I'm learning lessons from them all the time. Yeah, Haley's over on Instagram saying multi-teacher studio represent. Yeah, do we have any other multi-teacher studios listening in today? Hi, My Melodies Publishing just tuned in over on Instagram. Nice to see you. Okay, so that's our second lesson. We need to learn to recognize where are the positive influences in your business? How can we lean towards those? How can we surround ourselves with positive people, whether it's, colleagues, so other local music teachers or, communities of teachers that make you feel good and inspire you, or finding a coach or a mentor. Really grow towards that light. Look for the things in your business and in your life that bring you joy and that help you along your journey. And remember to rotate yourself occasionally and make sure that we're paying attention to all of the important aspects, not only in our business, but in our lives, so that we are feeding all of the areas, right? We don't want to just feed one side of that plant and get lopsided and eventually fall over. All right, so that's our second lesson here. If this is resonating, let me know. Our let me see. Let me double check to make sure. Okay, we're good over on that as well. Sorry, we're multi-streaming and there's just a lot of moving parts behind the scenes here. Okay, let's get to our third lesson from Houseplants. And this is one that endlessly frustrates me because I'm the kind of person who loves to propagate like some of the cool plants that I own, especially succulents. And succulents are real slow growers. The lesson that we learn here is that growth is never instantaneous. It really does not happen overnight. If you take a leaf propagation, or if you sow a seedling, or if you repot a sickly plant, you're not going to expect to see immediate growth, even though you might be that person that like checks on it every day to just make sure it's doing okay. It takes a lot of time and energy for a plant to establish new roots, right? And it can often take months before we see any outward growth at all. Same thing that's happening in our businesses. So whether you are starting a new venture or if you are up-leveling your current business, adding a new income stream, expecting to see those outward results immediately can set us up for disappointment. So we need to give ourselves permission, give our business roots permission and time to grow so that we can establish those systems and all of that good stuff. And I know that can be frustrating, especially if you are. Let's speak to the idea of establishing a new income stream. Earlier we mentioned Julie, who went from having one income stream with teaching lessons to adding an additional income stream, an area of her business that was teacher resources. I see a lot of teachers who do similar types of things. Maybe you are launching a podcast. Maybe you are starting a membership. When it comes to that initial, that first year of starting that new income stream, growth will be slow. Now, there are different ways that we can encourage that growth, and if we wanted to follow the houseplant analogy, we're talking about things like, really prepping the soil, making sure that the conditions that we have where that plant is going to be set are going to really work for that plant. Is it getting enough light? Is it getting enough nutrients? What kind of a watering schedule does it need to be on, etc.? There are things that we can do ahead of time. But even with that, even when all the conditions are perfect, growth takes time. So giving ourselves permission to be patient is important. And I also realize that it's hard, right? Because we're still going to check on that plant every day. Great analogy here. Julie says, getting rid of weeds in our business is difficult but necessary. Ah, yes, I love that. Oh, thanks. Savvy Music Studio is great fertilizer. That might be the best thing I've heard all day, all week. That's great. Elizabeth says, thank you for number 3. I'm glad that resonates with you, Elizabeth. And I think we can relate that to, areas outside of our business as well. Just being patient with taking on new projects and, getting into new things. It's like last year when I made the decision to get more serious about what I was doing at the gym, and I started weightlifting for the first time. Did I want to be like totally ripped by the time like in my head I was like, I'm going to be like ripped in 6 months? Did that happen? Absolutely not. Well, there are outside influences with that. One, like my body wasn't ready for that. Two, stuff happens and my routine wasn't always consistent. But looking back, am I stronger now than I was 1 year ago? 100%. It just takes time. All right, let's move on to number 4. Okay, so we have 2 more points here. I like this one. So, and this is going to tie in. I keep looking off to the side here. I have a little guest that's going to show up in a moment. So I'll give you the full story of where this broadcast came from. And we're going to answer the question as to what happened to that guy back there. All right. The fourth thing that we can learn from houseplants is that conversation's good. Do you know that houseplants love sound? They respond to conversation, whether it's, they respond to vibration, whether it's from the sound of a human voice or the sound of, the birds and the insects outside, or it can even be music. They interpret this sound as mechanical stimuli that will actually encourage cellular and metabolic changes. It's fascinating. I remember in school, we did a project. I can't remember what grade it was. We did a project. It took a long time, where we had two sets of plants that were that had different types of music played to them. So we had the classical, like Mozart, Haydn, that type of classical music, and then we had, I think we did like heavy metal. And I honestly don't remember the results, but it was fascinating that the plants did grow differently. Anyway, I'm fascinated by weird stuff like that. So what can we learn here? What can we learn about this idea that plants will benefit from conversation and from sound? Communication's important. Whether it's talking with your clients and keeping communication open. And when I say talking, I actually mean talking. There are so many times when problems arise in our business, and we as business owners may feel as though we are being disrespected because a client is questioning something, or asking for something that is outside of the policy. And more often than not, let me get to, one more thing. So those things happen, right? And because when we feel disrespected or we feel challenged, we get this kind of like, this idea of like responding versus reacting, and we might fall into that reacting. And what happens when we get into reacting? A lot of us, especially in today's society that relies so heavily on technology, we immediately go towards, I'm going to email them or I'm going to text them, rather than picking up the phone or having an in-person conversation. Conversation's important. We said this we have some graphics that go out about this at least a couple times a year, around the fact that, verbal communication and being able to communicate either in person or even over the phone can be much more effective than that written text, because written text does not have tone. So what we learn from the houseplants and the way that they respond to vibration is that conversation is key. And so talking with your clients is a really important part about running your business. And also, another lesson we can take from this is that it's important to talk to your team, even if you are a team of one who wears a lot of different hats. Keep those communication lines open. It's imperative. These are the things that we need in order to run our business. All right. If this is resonating, let me know if you're picking up the vibrations that I'm putting down. The final lesson that we can take is where my little houseplant friend is going to come in. So let me bring him on stage, shall we? I'm going to have to get up for this because he's big. Well, he used to be big. All right. So, this is the plant. Ooh, this is heavy. This is the plant that used to be behind me here, right next to that yellow chair where that little basket is, right? You can see he's looking a little sad right now. So this is where the inspiration came from for this broadcast. You can see what's happened here is that this plant, I'm going to put this down because this is like majorly heavy. All right. So everybody send some well wishes to this little guy. Not so little guy. I'll put you back in your spot when we're done. So here's what happened. I love this plant. I think it's so pretty. And I used to keep it behind me here in the broadcast because I love having that splash of green in the background. Well, what happened with this plant is that I've had it for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, probably 2 years. And last year I had thought about repotting it, and you might have noticed that I actually had a double pot there, right? I had the small pot inside, and then I had this big pot. And rather than repotting this plant at the time that I bought that big pot, I just kind of like plopped him in there and just it was like, okay, I'll get to it later. So I ignored rule number one, right? That pot size matters. Well, what happened over the next year when that plant did not have the room that it needed, unbeknownst to me, there were some big issues happening down below. So although I was doing all of the other maintenance about trimming leaves and making sure that it had wasn't going lopsided, it was getting enough light, it was getting all of the nutrients it needed, there were things happening down below. So this is where number 5 comes in. You can't control everything. Well, actually, I could have controlled some of this, but what ended up happening is this pot, this plant, its roots, some of the roots went down below, and those roots plugged up the drainage holes in the bottom of the pot. So even though the top of the soil would feel dry every couple of weeks, and that's when it would get watered, what was happening is that pot was not draining at all. And those roots down below started rotting. And the plant started losing leaves left and right. And after a while, then I should have just used scissors, but I went to pull out one of the leaves, and an entire section of the plant came out because the rot had spread all the way up through, and it had rotted to the top of the plant. So that guy had to go outside, get totally ripped apart. All of the, whatever was viable, I saved, and hopefully in a few more months, this guy's going to look a lot healthy. But what I'd like to say to this point is sometimes you just can't control everything, right? You can give a houseplant all of the right things, water, light, nutrition, good soil, etc., and shit can still go wrong. There might be mold. There could be pests, maybe you get some pests from outdoors. The roots could accidentally get waterlogged and you just didn't realize it. Or as years ago, there used to be a plant sitting right on top of this banister that you see here. Or, like a cat can knock the plant off the banister and like break a lamp underneath it. That happens too. When it comes to business, we can pour all of our love into a project and still end up falling short of success because the situation's outside of our control. So my encouragement to you here and my invitation to you is don't beat yourself up. There will be more plants and there will be more projects. We cannot control everything. The only thing we can control is how we choose to respond when things go wrong. And so don't beat yourself up. Learn the little lessons from, the mistakes that we make and pick up and move on. Because like I said, there will be new houseplants and there will be new projects. I love this. Jill says the most important takeaway is I should talk to my plants. Yes, exactly. All right, so we are going to do a rapid recap here. If you have enjoyed this little discussion and you would like to get a hold of all of the points that I went through today, you can, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, drop the word plant down below and the Savvy Sara bot will reach out to you. And if this is also a great way, if you are not already on our newsletter list, we put out news and resources every Monday. We also put out emails on Wednesday that regarding these broadcasts that we do. And we are going to be putting out, we have some new content coming out in the coming months here where we are working on making sure that we get at least one nice big old blog post out every month as well. You're going to be getting one towards the end of October here. So if you put the word plant down below, that is how you can get a hold of the show notes. You're going to get a little recap of what we talked about today, and you'll also see information about where you can subscribe to our newsletter, and where you can also subscribe to get text notifications when we do these live broadcasts. So that's where you can get all of that. If you're on YouTube and you're watching over there, you can look in the live replay, the live chat replay, or you can look in the description of this video, and there will be a link where you can do those same things. If you click that link, you'll get a little message delivered to you and all of the goods. All right. All right. I love that. See, Elizabeth put down plant. So did Jill. And so did Julie. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's do our rapid recap here. If you tuned in a little late, I'm going to go through all 5 points really fast. So please give me a drum roll, because this is not at all stressful to do these rapid recaps. All right. Here we go. And here we go. So you might know that, Sara Campbell from Savvy Music Studio loves cats, but did you know that I also love houseplants? I've been doing a lot of houseplant care, and as I was repotting some plants and figuring stuff out, my brain kind of drifted off and started thinking about, you know what? There are a lot of business lessons that we can learn from these houseplant items that I'm doing today. So here are 5 lessons that we can take from houseplants, and no, you do not have to have a green thumb in order to benefit from these. The first thing that we can learn from houseplants is that pot size matters. Plants need to be repotted every couple of years. At least most plants do. They're going to outgrow their container, and if they aren't moved into a bigger pot, then what ends up happening is the roots get all bound up in there, and they aren't able to get enough nutrients because the soil is zapped. Same thing can happen to us as business owners. So it is important to check the roots and the foundations and the systems inside of your business on a regular basis, at least once a year, right? Otherwise, we run the risk of outgrowing those systems and zapping our own energy. The second thing, all right, another lesson we can learn from houseplants is that it's important to grow towards the light. If you keep a houseplant in one spot and you never rotate the pot, what you'll notice is after a while, that plant keeps growing towards whatever window or whatever light source is close to it. And if it's not rotated, eventually that pot in that plant become lopsided and run the risk of falling over. There are 2 lessons that we can take from this. One, hey, it's important to lean towards positive opportunities and positive people. So surround yourself with light, surround yourself with things that are going to bring you joy inside of your business. And another thing that we need to learn from this is that it's important to balance how we're growing. Make sure that we're looking at all areas of our business and not just growing in one direction. Another thing we can learn from plants? Growth does not happen instantly. If you propagate a leaf, or sow a seedling, or maybe you're repotting a sickly plant, don't expect to see immediate growth. We know that just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of energy for a plant to establish roots and yada, yada, yada. It may take months before you see any outward growth. The same thing can happen inside of business ventures. So if you're starting a new venture, some type of a new income stream, or if you've up potted and you've really, changed the model inside of your business, give yourself time to grow. If we are expecting immediate results, we may set ourselves up for disappointment. So give yourself time and patience to grow. Did you know that houseplants love sound? Hang with me here. All right, there's a business lesson to be taken from this. Houseplants love sound, conversation, music, because they interpret vibration as this mechanical stimuli that then results in cellular and metabolic changes. It's so fascinating. What can we learn here from plants? Well, communication is really important. Whether it is keeping open lines of communication with your clients, and I'm not talking about email and text, I'm not talking about actually talking, whether it's in person or over the phone, that's a really important aspect because we cannot interpret tone via text or email. So keeping those lines of communication open is imperative. And the other thing that we can learn from this idea of, plants loving sound and conversation and music is that, hey, it's important to keep those lines of communication open with your team. even if you were only a team of one. Final thought here, right? You can give a houseplant all the right things. You can give it all the water it needs, the light it needs, the location it needs, the nutrients it needs, the soil it needs. You can trim it and maintain it and all of this stuff. And you know what? Shit can still go wrong. Mold or pests might infest the soil. You might accidentally get a plant that's waterlogged because you don't realize that it's root bound, or, a cat can knock the plant off of the table. What can we learn here? You can pour all of your love into a project, into a new venture in your business, and you can still end up falling short of success due to external circumstances that you cannot control. We can't control everything, and that's okay. So my encouragement to you here is don't beat yourself up. If something falls short, learn the small lessons from it, pick yourself up, and realize that there will be more houseplants and there will be more projects along the way. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. That's where you can catch us live, or you can always catch our recaps over on Instagram. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and look us up on Facebook and Instagram and all of the places. And if you do want to get a hold of the notes from this little broadcast here, if you drop the word plant down below, the Savvy Sara bot will send you information, and that's where you can get a hold of the show notes and find other ways to connect with us here at Savvy Music Studio. So until the next time, stay savvy and stay you, because you are an amazing teacher and there's no one in the world quite like you. And I think you're pretty dang awesome. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.